Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've been following my channel, you will know that some 3 years ago, I quit my job as an automotive clay modeler and kind of show car builder to pursue a new career in clock and watchmaking. And to do this, I took on a 3-year full-time course at the BCU, well, more specifically at the School of Jewellery and Watchmaking on Victoria Street in Birmingham, the Jewellery Quarter. And wow, I've done videos on the first and second year, and basically this was the final year, the third year, and it completely changes in that third year. There are very few kind of actual lectures as such. You do have guests come in, specialists in certain areas. We even got to go on some trips, like we went to visit Bremont. We went up Tower Clock, Big Ben, so basically right up next to Big Ben, only a metre away, as the gong strikes. It was absolutely superb. These are things you don't get to do normally unless you're part of, this kind of group of people. And so the final year, what it actually entails is 15 pieces of work. Now, those 15, they want 4 types of watch servicing. So you do watch servicing, not only watch servicing, but little specialist things like adjusting pallets, pallet jewels, and things like that. So kind of these slightly more specialist stuff, and also complex repairs, which I'll talk about in a minute. But also you've got to build your clock. Now, I gave in a clock design at the start of, at the end of year 2. I did modify it by, when I actually come to make it in year 3. But let's talk about the watch servicing first. So they want to see you do things like, let's say, a quartz, chronographs, calendar, date, manual winds, all these kind of things. So I did watches. I think it's an Oris 65 diver, a high beat, say, King Seiko, which was actually really nice. Things like an Omega 613 Cartier, Omega Chronostop as one of my chronographs, and then a more complex Omega Speedmaster Automatic, which is an 8-hand day-date watch, and that was actually quite a complex bit of kit. But I also added things in like mainspring manipulations, because I'm lucky I'd already been working for the last year and a half as a watchmaker, so I was already kind of doing some things like this, which obviously gave me a little bit of an advantage. So also I was looking up at watches I was doing, I was also getting paid for, which did kind of help somewhat. So I was also polishing, and just any little extra bits I could do to try and make my work stand out a little bit more. I was doing these things. But not only do you have to service them, you also have to write about it. So what oils did you use? Why did you use this oil? What's the advantage of using that? Timing reading. So what was it before you service it? What was it after? And these kind of things to prove that your service is good enough. So you'd actually have to give data to back up what you've done. But also you would be given, you had to do 4 different complex repairs. So the first one I did was a Rolex Jubilee bracelet. I did a complete repinning. So what that entailed was stripping every single link apart, filing down every single link to a preset size. I think it was 2.55 mil, and replacing it all together, but still maintaining the flex and fully polished. That was my first one. I did this because I'm lucky enough. I'm quite good at polishing, to be fair, so that kind of thing did help. But also then I stepped it up, and I did like what's considered like the holy grail of the kind of complex repairs, and that was turn a balance staff. A balance staff is the center of the balance wheel, and it's the pivot which it stands on. The balance wheel actually sits on. Now, I had a customer's pocket watch which came in, and the pivot on the end was broke, so I thought perfect opportunity to make a balance staff. Now, I'm going to give you the idea of sizes we are talking here. It's probably around about, it's the length of the end of a piece of pencil, kind of thing. The end pivots were I turned them down by hand to 0.12 of a millimeter. So almost a tenth of a millimeter, just using one of these. This is a tungsten carbide bit. And basically I would have my eyeglass and I would be positioned a couple of inches away from the job and just gently turning by hand. And there was also lots of different areas. I supported it in a collet as I was doing this. Then I had to rotate it round and do the other side. And you have to rely on having incredibly sharp tools for this, because you're using what's called pivot steel, and you've got to make sure you turn it perfect. When you're talking 0.12 of a millimeter, that's probably, well, it's definitely thinner than that at the end there. It gives you an idea of what you're actually turning. And then I put it in a special old tool which uses a bow, and you polish the ends to get down that last 0.1 of a mil. So I've got, for it to fit in the jewels of the pocket watch. And I was lucky enough and did it on my first attempt. So over a moon with that one. It was great. And then other things, unfortunately I can't show you because it was in a customer's watch, was this. I'm going to have to zoom in here so you can see what I've actually done. So this is a more straightforward one to do. I don't know if you can just about see. That is called the yoke. And you can see it there lit up in blue. And now as I pull the crown in and out, it basically guides this here. And that's the sliding pinion. So in that position manual, that's actually doing your handset, and the other, it's winding the mainspring. And so this here, it's got a thickness of 0.75 of a millimeter, and I basically made that by filing it all, just kind of working out the shape from what you have in here. Then what I did, I polished it, I heated it up till it was cherry red to get it nice and hard, and then I tempered it to this blue. Now how you temper it is I place it on a strip of steel, brass, and then heated it up from underneath. And as it started to go to the right temper, it started to turn blue. And you have to be so fast at removing the heat so you don't get it too hot. It's a matter of seconds and it will completely ruin it. So that was another one I did. That only took me about 3 hours or so. And then as my final one, I made a a stem here. To give you an idea of size, there is a pen tip. So this actually, at the end here, this pivot isn't actually that small. I haven't measured it, but it's probably, I don't know, 0.7 of a mil or something like, or 0.5, I'm not quite sure, without measuring it again. And again, all I used was one of these to turn this and turn the rest of it. Obviously, I had a smaller tool to go in for the groove, and then I had to file on these squares there, because that's what interacts with the sliding pinion. And basically, I used a very small die and turned the thread on the end there. So it gives you the idea of the kind of things you have to do. You don't have to do these, but these are kind of, to be fair, this is maybe a little bit harder than the yoke. The yoke is relatively straightforward, I'd say. This is a little bit harder to get it right, so obviously you've got the square on there as well. But overall, these are things you should be able to do as a clock and watchmaker. So that was the watch side of things. If you choose to do clocks or specialize in clocks, you will obviously there'll be different things you'll kind of aim for, but obviously I went for watches. Now when it came to my clock, I wanted to be completely different. Everyone makes kind of goes for the brass clocks. Don't get me wrong, there was a couple of real kind of standout ones in my year. That was from Ben Bagnall. He made an amazing marine chronometer. Ted, he did his amazing York Cathedral type thing. Anna, she did a lovely kind of distressed looking clock with a lily and everything. It was really quite nice. And Kim also did a lovely clock as well. So mine in comparison was completely different. I went for all modern materials. I like the don't get me wrong, I like the older clocks, but I like them mainly for engineering aspects. I'm not so keen on the aesthetics, so I went for something completely different. I used things like carbon fiber. ceramic roller bearings. To give you an idea, I think I've got one here. That is actually a full ceramic roller bearing with actual ceramic ball bearings. The advantage of these is they require so little friction to move, and they're completely lubrication free. I originally was going to use metal ones, but found that they required the friction to bypass the wheels of the bearings wasn't great enough from an actual clock, the transmission of power through a clock. So you have to cut all the wheels in, even down to what's called these. These are called pinions. So I was like practicing on larger ones. This is quite a large pinion. This was a practice piece I just did out of brass. And what I did was make them. So is it this one? Or I think these are just old ones I didn't use or might have used parts from. So it gives you an idea. Can I zoom in on that? So this hole was a little bit too small, but I would cut them out of steel, and then I'd bore a hole through to where there was very, very little kind of material left, and slide them onto the arbors. Onto the actual wheel. So you've got the larger wheel which I'd cut, and then this would go on the end, and this would transfer the power to the next wheel. So, you know, you get to learn how to do all these. We even had a specialist guy come in and teach us how to cut these. And that's a kind of beauty at the BCU. They do have lots of different people who can come in and help. So I literally went a more modern, some would say Art Deco approach to my clock. And to be fair, I was really happy. We started off with 15 of us in our group, and by the end, I think there was only about 5 of us who had like working clocks. Don't get me wrong, the others did have clocks. They weren't quite there yet. And it's like anything. It's all time management. It is really, really hard to kind of get all that. But it's one of those things. Overall, I really enjoyed it. And then basically it all kind of came to a head. I was lucky and I did quite well. I got a first. So I was quite lucky there. And we went along next to the actual ceremony, which is a very, very British kind of type thing. If you're from Britain, you'll know when you get a degree, you get all dressed up. If you're from America or other countries, you know what us Brits are like. We like to go over the top when it comes to these things. So we're wearing full cap and gown outfits for when you go up and you receive your degree. So we all, I think all of us who were left, we all got a BA honours degree in actual clock and watch in horology. There was, I think, 4 of us in total who got the first class honours, and it was such a great day. Yeah, you're all dressed up. You're at the Royal Symphony, the Symphony Hall in Birmingham, and it was an amazing event, absolutely superb. So it's kind of one of those things. If you really want to pursue a career in clock and watchmaking, and you want to, try and pursue and get yourself a degree in this, not that it's necessarily needed, but it does open more doors, especially if you want to work abroad and places like that. The BCU horology course does offer some great kind of, it opens so many doors, and you get to meet so many influential people, people like Roger Smith. I've met Roger Smith now a good few times. He's such a nice guy. You get to meet the guys over at Bremont and Christopher Ward, Tag, and you get to meet all these different people. So suddenly watchmaking world becomes incredibly small because you start to know so many people in these different areas, and it's all from doing this course actually at the BCU. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you to it at that one, but I will do a video at some point showing how I made my clock. So you've got a good idea how all that happened, but that's for a later time because that will be an incredibly long video. Any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll always try and get back to you. But most importantly, you'll stay safe out there. So take care. Bye.